Oh, hello. Hi, I'm Jasmine Guffond, and thanks again to Thomas Grill for inviting me to perform last night here at the truly wonderful sounding multi-channel sound system here in the Klang Theatre. And for presenting here today in the context of the Rotting Sounds Symposium. I guess I've already been introduced, but I am an artist that works primarily with sound. I produce records and perform live electronic music. And in the last 6 years, I've also been very much focused on sonifying surveillance technologies, such as facial recognition technologies, Wi-Fi and GPS networks and internet cookies, to provide an audible presence for otherwise intangible processes that are increasingly interwoven into our everyday lives. But today I'm going to talk about another work called Degradation Loops. And Degradation Loops was originally a 16-day generative sound composition that was exhibited as a 6-channel sound installation in December 2016 at 55 Sydenham Road, Marrickville, an artist-run gallery on Gadigal land in so-called Sydney, Australia. I was invited to participate in a group show in which the visual artists Alexander Goronsky and Jelena Telecki destroyed and reassembled their own previously made work to create new work and question commercial imperatives within the art industry. So this is Alex Goronsky's piece, Retrospective, an installation consisting of various artworks from 1988 to 2016. And if I remember correctly, Alex had pulled out previous works from his storage unit in Sydney and reassembled them into a new installation in the form of a barricade. And I have a quote here from Alex about this work and that show in general, which is, what is the identity and or value of art in storage and beyond capture by the art market? Is it a utility, a speculative entity, or just rubbish? And this is Jelena Teleki's installation, Top Hat Whitetails, made from unsold paintings and sculpture from 2010 to 2016. And I have another quote here from Alex about the overall exhibition, which is, I think the unifying thread is about value. That is, what is art if no one wants to buy it and it continues to go unseen by the public? Piles was the name of the group show, which I somehow wasn't aware of until I was installing. So there was a last minute decision to place the computer that was running the Max Patch on top of a pile of road cases. And this is the context from which I got the idea for Degradation Loops. The idea being to gradually destroy my album Yellow Bell that had been released on the Sonic Pieces label in 2015. The concept was for a process of sonic destruction to gradually unfold over the duration of the exhibition, which happened to be 16 days. So at the end of 16 days, the album would be completely destroyed. Next, I opened up the Software Max MSP to try and work out how to execute this idea. And I came across an object that is literally called degrade. The degrade object allows one to alter the sampling rate and bit depth of the sound. That is how often over time a sound wave is digitally sampled and the number of bits of information in each sample. Now, if this works, yep. So, I'm sort of operating it remotely. So that's the degrade object. And if you go into the help menu, sorry, I don't know if you can. Oh. So, yep. As you can see, I have not got much experience. Here we go. Is it coming or is it coming? Here we go. Yeah, so it explains it's a signal quality reducer, and that it takes any given signal and reduces the sampling rate and bit depth as specified or desired. And the bit depth rate that one has access to with this object is from 24 to 1. And to give you a context for that, I'm sure already many of you know, but a CD is at 16 bits. And the sampling rate, you have, they've mapped it from 1 to 0, and I don't actually know what exactly values they've mapped it onto, but basically 1 is what they call full and 0 is as degraded as this object will make your sound. And then there's this warning dialog box here. Exercise caution, discarding information increases noise and hence energy. And I really wish that I'd noticed that dialog box when I was originally making this piece, because as a 16-day process, I tried to listen to it for as long as I could before it was actually installed. And so I'd have all the speakers set up in my room and I'd have it running and I'd fall asleep and turn off the speakers and then wake up in the morning and first thing turn on the speakers and hear that it was still processing. My main concern being I was just hoping that it wouldn't crash at some point during the 16 days, but I never heard it until its end. And then I was in Sydney during the show and I got a call from the gallery director and he was like, you have to come over here immediately, like there's this really, really loud noise. And so I went down to the gallery and there was like an incredibly loud white noise sort of sound, much louder than it had been at the opening, and I just turned everything down. And then this is also quite funny and I hadn't noticed it before. If you have to ask why, you probably won't find this object useful. And I thought that was quite funny to see basically a software blatantly advising its users not to engage with it philosophically. So I made this just 2.5 minute version, so you can just hear the degrade object in action, which I'll play now.
I'm sure there's one in the back. I put to it. Yeah, I know. I'm sure there's one in the back. I put to it.
do I see it here? I can't see my notes anymore.
Maybe they are in the background of the page.
I should be able to see them on this screen.
You have to change to PowerPoint.
I am on PowerPoint there, though. Like I am.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up here. Okay, what do you do?
It's shifting over the screens.
Okay, I might have to do that again though. Control on that. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so then I was invited to install a version of Degradation Loops at for Musée Ruola, an event that took place at the Trans Art Festival in Bolzano in Italy. And it was installed in this like rambling garden plant shop. And so I felt the sonic destruction spoke tangentially to the imminent destruction of the environment. And in 2018, I also released a recorded 30-minute version with Carl Records. And I don't know if she's here. I invited an Austrian Vienna-based artist, Katharina Scheuscher, to design the cover because she had a series of photographs that were close-ups of degrading paint on walls, which I felt was a fitting visual equivalent to a sonic degradation, which in its destruction of audio or transposition from sound to noise allows for another form of beauty to emerge. Katharina's image is of paint peeling from a small hut on the outskirts of Reykjavik, and she zooms in and captures the visual aesthetic beauty of degradation. And now I'm going to move over to another. Yes. So I thought, even though maybe a lot of you were here last night and heard me perform for the first time a version of it live, this is documentation from the audio of the original exhibition. I've condensed the 16 days into 15 minutes, and I won't play the full 15 minutes, but I'll just play you a bit from the beginning, middle and end. And perhaps what I should mention, which I forgot to mention earlier, is that rather than just playing the entire album over and over for 16 days, I actually made loops from material from the album. So I made loops from all of the tracks except for one, hence the name Degradation Loops. In conclusion, if I can find my cursor again. The other side? Okay. Yeah, so in conclusion, the origins of Degradation Loops was very much responding to visual artists' attempt to destroy existing work and thereby make new work. It was important to me that the work was running non-stop over the 16 days period, regardless of whether the gallery was open to the public or not. I like that the work could function in a way that wasn't dependent on the gallery actually being open, which for me related back to this question that the visual artists were posing: what is the value of art if it is unsold, yet continues to exist unseen by a public? Is it a speculative entity or just rubbish? By engaging bit crushing as the means to destroy my album, I also started thinking about the standardization of audio formats and thereby the standardization of listening. By deliberately deconstructing the audio signal of a commercial product, my Yellow Bell album, Degradation Loops addresses an audio realm where preconceived principles of high definition sound dominate in an overall musicscape that, through format standards, is uniform. One example of this would be the compact disc. An industry standard sampling rate of 44.1 kilohertz and a bit rate of 16 was established by the corporations Philips and Sony for the compact disc format in 1982, and at this time became an encoding standard by which to communicate, listen, and make music. And when you start to look at these histories, it is fascinating what decisions end up dictating format standards and thereby listening standards. For example, Sony and Philips, due to various technical reasons at the time in the late 70s, and early 80s, had to decide on a sampling rate for the CD. And there was a decision to be made between, should it be 44.1 kilohertz or 44.056 kilohertz? And they chose 44.1 because it's easier to remember. And probably the difference between 44.1 and 44.056 is negligible, but I am fascinated and at times horrified at how decisions that end up having a major impact on how we listen to music, or any audio for that matter, come to be. So for Degradation Loops, I haven't gone deeply into background research. I more or less responded to an invitation to participate in that group show and then made the work. So I will leave you with a quote from Jonathan Stern's research into MP3s and his advocacy for format theory. MP3s are particularly interesting because their development relates to not just what was technically possible at the time. And of course, none of these histories are ever just about what is technically possible. Of course, there are always cultural, social, and financial factors playing a role. But in particular, for MP3s, this becomes apparent with the drive to make a small audio file that could be easily distributed, which is key to the MP3's widespread use. It is the most commonly distributed audio format. And to make it small, the basic idea is to discard information that a human listener doesn't actually hear, so information outside of the human hearing range. Although this information beyond the human hearing range does affect what we do actually hear. So the development of the MP3 format incorporates and is influenced by the idea of a phantom or idealized listener. And this is Stern's quote. The MP3 carries with it practical and philosophical understandings of what it means to communicate and what it means to listen or speak, how the mind's ear works and what it means to make music. Encoded in every MP3 are whole worlds of possible and impossible sound and whole histories of sonic practices. Perhaps every sound technology in human history contains with it some model or script for hearing and an imagined ideal auditor. But MP3 encoders build their files by calculating a moment-to-moment relationship between the changing contents of a recording and the gaps and absences of an imagined listener at the other end. The MP3 encoder works so well because it guesses that its imagined auditor is an imperfect listener in less than ideal conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasmine.
Thanks.
So, are there any questions in the audience? If not, then I would ask Thomas to join us. And yeah, maybe you have one.
Yeah, my main question actually is about the creative process or the thoughts going into the use of the degrade tilde object. Till today told us about this canvas that one uses, and one uses the set of possibilities within the canvas. And obviously the degrade tilde object has been designed by someone, you know, with certain characteristics. Obviously, one should not think too much about them, right? So as it says. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, how do you feel about, like, so to say, totally subjecting your work to this degrade tilde object that someone else has built?
Well, I think, I mean, because I do work with computers to make music and sound work, that I'm always being, you know, limited or defined by what they can do or the canvas. Maybe that's what Till meant by the canvas. And so there's this like shared agency between machine and artist. And I just think that's part of the process. Sometimes it's more frustrating than others. And of course, there's times when I would like to, I mean, I'm not a programmer besides doing a bit of Max MSP. There are times when I have ideas that I would like someone to program for me maybe, or like the lack of agency is kind of frustrating. But yeah, it's part of the process, I think, when you work with any sort of medium.
And you seem to have been surprised by the workings of it, no? I mean...
Yeah, well, I realised kind of preparing for this talk and then going back through that process at the time, how I engage with these things so much more as an artist and a technician in a way. Like I could have just done a test. Like what happens, you know, after half an hour of the degrade object, but it didn't sort of somehow occur to me to do that. So I was then surprised by the outcome.
Another thing that came to my mind is actually Degradation Loops by William Basinski.
Yeah.
Do you know them?
Yeah,
Is it a coincidence, the naming, or is it has it something to do with that? Just as an explanation, it's a tape work by William Basinski that was created in, I think, 2001, in the same time that the Twin Towers collapsed. There's even the Twin Towers under attack on the cover of this album. And it's a work with tapes that continuously re-record themselves, and you know, the content gets degraded over time.
Yeah, I came up with the title because of the degrade object, and it literally is Degradation Loops. But as soon as the title came into my head, I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to think that I've just copied from, you know, or taken Disintegration Loops. Which is a very beautiful album, and I like it a lot, and no doubt because I know that album, maybe that title popped into my head as well, you know. But then I thought, well, it's a small show at an artist-run space in Sydney, and artists are maybe less likely to know the title, and I think it's okay. And then when I decided to do an album, I did really think, oh, maybe I should change the name, because I know then people are going to make this connection all the time. But I just couldn't find a better title, and I do love Disintegration Loops, that album, and I thought it's kind of nice if, like, when people review that album, they make reference to it, which they kind of did. But I also made very clear in the press release how the title came about.
For me, as a curator of this, actually, I liked this fact that Disintegration Loops is analog and yours is digital.
Okay,
and so it's another way of looking at it. So
yeah, and also I once heard a talk with Jonathan Stern, I think before his book, The Meaning of Format, MP3's The Meaning of Format came out, where he gave a demonstration of sitting in a room by Alvin Lucier using MP3 encoding. So the same kind of thing where gradually it got, I'm assuming everyone knows Alvin Lucier's mechanical sitting in a room. Otherwise, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.